So guys, like I said, I'm super stoked. We do have this schedule and the shooting, and we got all kinds of stuff going on. Like I said, build an amazing portfolio, and then in the meantime, Chad and I are going to hopefully give you guys some great business things you can apply as well. Basically, what we want to do is we want to teach you how to do things differently. Some of those things might not work, but hopefully if you can apply them to your business, you'll kind of figure that.
Did you take that yesterday as well?
Yeah, this is what Keith figured out. But
do it right.
just do it different. But like I said, there's gonna be things that are gonna absolutely, you're gonna be like, oh, I can definitely apply that to my business, and there's gonna be other things you're gonna be like, oh yeah, I already do that, and then there's gonna be things that you're like, that might not work for me. We're gonna throw it all at you, and hopefully something comes from it. Okay. Basically, we want you to be a little dog. So we're gonna take that, and you're gonna be like, you know what, I'm no longer afraid of business. I'm gonna be a little dog. I'm gonna go after the competition and have some fun. So let's jump right into this, guys. I'm gonna get right into the camera tips. And by the way, there's nothing really on my slides that are like small text. I know Shannon's been to one of my workshops, and I think that's it. So please don't worry about like not being able to see anything here besides the big lettering. Dan is also bringing some notes very shortly that I'm going to give to you guys, and it's basically my notes from what I'm going to talk about, and then there's little spaces on the side, and you guys can write whatever you like as well. So with that, I want you guys to actually pull out your cameras, and we're going to get right into the little camera stuff. Is that what you said?
I left mine in my car.
Uh-oh, that's all right. No problem. And guys, I just want to see real quickly what cameras we have. And the only reason I say that is because I see a lot of Canons. Didn't bring it. Okay, that's fine. I know a lot of them, but if there's anyone that maybe is a nice guy. Did you forget some? Nice. Avi.
Totes Avi.
Cool. What else? We got a Canon there.
Yeah.
I see a lot of Mark II, Mark IIIs.
I was 60.
60. Okay, awesome. All right, cool. There's some features that I just want to make sure that when I talk about, like the Nikon doesn't have.
It's so funny.
By the way, guys, when I actually show up at a wedding, when I walk right into the bridal suite, I'll put my biggest lens on, and even though I hardly ever shoot with a flash, I'll actually pop a flash on. And we have a stapler over there too. We can just pass the stapler around either. It's 3 pages.
They might not want staples if you want staples.
Yeah, if you want it. And guys, it sounds so silly, but I literally will walk in the bridal suite like this, and then I'll be like, all right, and then I will pop this off once everyone's seen me, because why? It's the perception factor.
Yeah, totally.
They want to see like, oh my goodness, that photographer's like big stuff, like they got a huge lens and big old flash and all that kind of craziness. So if you're not doing that, I would definitely start doing that. It's kind of fun. But I want to ask you guys, how many of you guys are shooting? And again, some of this stuff is very basic, but we'll go through it really, really quick. But how many of you guys are shooting manual versus aperture priority versus shutter priority? What are you guys doing? Is there anyone that's not manual? What are you doing? Manual? Anyone shooting on aperture priority? And it's not a bad thing.
I use that for my second camera.
For your second camera?
So I don't have to, if I have my long lens, I can just quickly flip it up.
Pull it up
and
and
think about it for a second.
And guys, and I'll tell you, there's times where I will switch over to aperture priority. It's not a bad thing. It's like, there's times where I'm just in a hurry. I'll go right into something and I'll be like, oh crap, aperture priority, let's just nail this thing, right? But I did want to just mention some of the reasons why I don't. And maybe if there's somebody like a second shooter and you're like, hey, check, can I get one? You might even just be like, hey, I want to show you when a great time to use aperture priority and when's a great time to use manual. But when it comes to it, this is my favorite example, and it's kind of an old example, but it's my favorite. Hold on one sec, guys. This got out of whack. Give me one second. In fact, let me just ask you guys, when would be that time when aperture priority would work, and when would be the best time to go back to manual? So like, when would be a time that you'd use aperture priority?
I like coming from a dark to light really quickly. Like
Uh-huh.
I guess the easiest example is coming out of a church.
Perfect.
And
Perfect.
Say, bright sunlight or something.
Okay, I love it. And when would be the time where manual would, like if you're using aperture priority, it would get it messed up if you were, in other words, if I was shooting in aperture priority, there you go, right? When that sun hits right behind, right? I want to show you guys, it looks like this thing rotated just a little bit. I just want to show you one quick example of it. You know what? We won't even do it. Let's not even worry about it. Oh, here. I'm sorry. It was right here. So just real quick, and again, we'll just fly through this. So on the aperture priority, and I apologize, guys, the colors are coming off really gold. I don't know why they're so gold, but I'm not going to worry about it. On aperture priority, if that sun were to come right behind their shoulder like that, obviously that's going to go dark, right? So that's the biggest thing. Now, I know, like you said, you guys are shooting it, so we're just going to go right onto it. What about on auto white balance? I know you're doing auto white balance?
I do.
What about auto like focus dots? Are you guys choosing your own focus dots?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Auto ISO. Surprisingly, when our cameras actually come, they come with auto ISO, and a lot of people will leave it there and not realize it. Or obviously auto exposure. We're not doing that. But guys, my goal is to really get you to be like that little dog. We want to get you off those auto functions, not because sometimes they can be helpful. There are times when I will go back to auto. There are times when I'm shooting a reception. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna try this on auto, and I shoot auto white balance, and it just works perfectly. And I'm like, great, now I don't have to worry about too much. I can leave it on auto. We got these beautiful white walls where I'm bouncing flash. It's, everything's fantastic. But my goal is, for example, on white balance, did anyone just recently start shooting? Didn't you just start shooting white balance in Kelvin?
Yeah, I'm sort
Has it changed?
I'm sort of new to it too. Now I'm fully Kelvin 100%, but yeah, I'm new.
Learning it?
Yeah,
Same here. Is there anyone who's really struggles with it, has tried it? Keith, you were telling me your story, right? I don't mean to do it like putting you on the spot, but you were saying you tried Kelvin.
Yeah, when I'm looking at the LCD, I can't tell whether it's right or not.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So I just go auto and do it
Okay.
on the computer, which is the bad way to do it and the long way to get it.
Yeah. Well, and guys, for me, the biggest thing that I've noticed is it takes about 2 weeks to really kind of like, feel comfortable shooting in Kelvin. Is anyone here, is it brand new to anyone? Anyone not here? Brand new? Awesome.
Like I messed with it like literally 2 times.
Okay.
And I was just like, I don't want to do with it.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to give you guys a few tips, and like I said, we'll go over it pretty fast, but if it's something that you're not doing consistently, please, when we're out shooting, let's talk about it. Let me just take you aside for 2 or 3 minutes and say, okay, here's where my Kelvin temperature is, and and here's, you can change it here. I'll help you guys get through that. The biggest thing to remember, guys, is when you're shooting in Kelvin, what's so nice about it is that your speed later on, like post-processing, doesn't it just like speed things up so quick? And then the nice thing is your shots right out of camera look beautiful. You don't have that like kind of grayish, bluish skin when you're shooting in the shadows and things like that. So it's so helpful. So I'll talk about that in just a second. The other thing, guys, is custom dials. I want to show you on your camera. A lot of you guys, the Nikon is actually buried in the menu. So it's not as efficient for Nikon users. It might be in the D3S, but there's a little dial on there, C1, C2, C3. You guys see that? It's one of my favorite dials on the camera, and I'm so surprised at how many people don't use it. So some of you might use it. Some of you might have never touched it or even seen it there. I'm just going to explain what it does real quick. All right? Because it's one of those little takeaways that I just absolutely love. The C1, C2, C3 it's basically custom 1, custom 2, custom 3. And what it means is I can actually, if I'm shooting, let's say I'm shooting in this room, and I dial in all my settings. I have my white balance at 5500. I'm shooting at 2.8, 1/200th of a second, and I'm like, this is awesome. And then I go over on this side of the room, and where the bride's getting ready, and she's standing underneath some really tungsten lights, and her skin's all yellow, and it's kind of creating this, funky look. And so I have to change my settings. But then I come back over here, and I'm shooting the bridesmaids, and I go back over there, I'm shooting the bride, and each time I'm changing all my settings. But what's nice about these C1, C2, C3 is I can come over here, I can lock in all my settings, and then I can memorize it to C1. Then I can go over where the bride's at, and I can do all my settings over there and memorize it to C2. And basically each time I just come over, C1, walk over there, C2, and my camera will change all the settings back and forth. So is anyone using that right now? No one? You guys want to know when I use it the most? Yeah, I use it the most when I shoot like bridal suite to groom suite, because it's always different lighting and stuff. And then also I do it before the bride comes down the aisle. What I do is I go down there, I go at the front of the aisle, I'll find some guests sitting down with the same kind of light in their shade or whatever. I'll get all my settings perfectly on that guest. Then I'll turn around and I'll do the back side, because usually, depending on the venue, they might be walking with the sun at their back, and then it's reversed. And so what I'll do is I'll get all my settings just right. Here, that's C1, and then I'll run around the back side of the aisle, and I'll shoot down the aisle this time, and that will be my C2. And so when the bride starts walking, I'll just be like C1, and I'll run around the other side, C2, and it's all, my shot's going to be perfect coming right out.
Does that store your Kelvin as well?
It does. It stores Kelvin, it stores your autofocus, it stores literally it stores if you're on AI servo or one shot. So the way to do it, if you have your camera with you, is basically you just go to your settings, so you're on manual or whatever. Go ahead and dial in whatever settings. So just pick some settings right now. In fact, just even choose what you got. And then I want you to go to the menu. And in the menu, there's on the Canons, it's going to be under the little wrenches. And you're going to see custom shooting mode or camera user settings. I think is what they call it. For some of the cameras, I think the Mark II is camera user setting, if I'm not mistaken, right? You're going to click that, and you're going to register one of them, your settings under one of the dials. So it'll say like custom shooting mode C1.
So I'm on C1 here, and then I register it.
Well, no, you don't even have to be on there. You can just be in manual or wherever. You can do it. It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
So
But
it
then
saves what your camera's on.
it
at that
saves
moment.
those settings: white balance, focus, shutter speed, aperture, everything. What one shot, AI servo or continuous or single, as they say in the Nikon. It looks like it's okay. We got Nikon back there.
wow.
Is everyone else Canon? What are you, Megan?
I'm Nikon.
Nikon. All right. So we got 3 Nikons and the rest are Canon. I think we can take it.
Yeah, seriously.
Oh, never mind.
She
We
can
got the
lift
power
all of
lifted.
you.
Okay, the only thing, the Nikon's a little bit different. You guys don't have the C1, C2 stuff, but it is buried deep in the menu, and there is a custom setting on there. Every Nikon's a little bit different, and it's not quite as easy to get to it like the Canon, but I did want to mention it because it is one of my favorite settings, and I'm surprised at just how little people use it. So, is that helpful? You guys gonna use that?
Yeah, that's amazing.
I hope so. All right. The other thing, guys, custom menu. This is another one that kind of surprised me. Nikon does have this, but if you go to the menu, there's a little menu at the very end. It's a star menu. And again, I'm surprised that how many people don't use this. If you click on that star, you can actually register your favorite menu settings. So if you go into your camera, and let's say one of the things you use often is white balance. You're changing your Kelvin temperature. Maybe here's some of the things I have: format card, custom shooting mode, which is what we just talked about. Slideshow. So the Mark III, you can actually do a slideshow. So I have that on here. Picture style. So you can basically, into the menu settings that you're constantly looking for in your camera, and you're like, oh, where was that one page of, formatting my card or whatever else? You can actually register those to the little star menu at the very end. It's called My Menu. And you can create your own little custom menu based off of those things that you look for the most. What, is that helpful?
Yes.
Awesome.
That's why I'm like, how did I not know?
Yeah, you know what, guys? Here's the funny thing. I love if there's something on my camera that doesn't make sense to me, I love figuring out what it is. I think often we get so accustomed to doing something the way we do it, and we get so worn out by editing and all the other stuff that we're just kind of like, I'm just going to keep doing the way I've been doing this whole time, and I'm not going to worry about trying to figure out other things. I'm that dork who sits on the plane and pulls my camera out and is looking through every little thing. And here's a little tip. For those of you who have the Mark III, did you know you can actually go to each of the menu settings, and then once you're in it, hit info, and it will actually give you a little page from your instructional manual that will walk you through what that is all about. So literally I was on a plane ride for 5 hours, and I was going through every single one of these, and I was clicking on it, and then I would hit info, and then it gives me a page, an instruction manual of what that does. So that's kind of what it is.
It's on the Mark III?
I think so. I don't remember seeing it on the Mark II. So anyhow, little extra thing right there. So guys, what about here's one more little thing for that Mark III. I put it on the page there. On the Mark III, again, you can't do this on the Mark II, but on the Mark III, there's this button right down here by the lens. How many of you guys have seen that button or know what that button is? That little button right down by the lens, right by my finger. It's the depth of field preview button, which I believe you guys do have it on the Mark II. Most people never use it. But on the Mark III, I have it customized, and Nikon, you guys can all do this, but you can customize buttons on your camera. I have it customized, so I always shoot in one-shot mode. What's the difference between one-shot and AI servo?
They also are constantly focusing.
Okay, constantly focusing, and one-shot does what?
Holds focus.
Locks it.
Yeah, so if I have my camera, if I come in here and I put it on one-shot, okay, and I focus, I'm going to take my lens cap on.
Am I your Jimmy for this workshop?
Yep.
Oh.
You're my Jimmy Prudente. So if I focus, what do you guys hear? You hear the little, right? That's one shot saying, hey, you're locked in. Shoot, right? But if I put on AI servo, are you going to hear that? You're not, right? When I'm focusing. Why? Because it's constantly focusing. So if I'm walking up on Shannon with AI servo, it's constantly focusing as I'm walking, right? Everyone got that, right? Yeah. So I use AI servo all the time when the bride's coming towards me walking down the aisle, when I have the couple walking, etc. But otherwise, I love one shot because I love that crispness. I love that ding, locks in, it doesn't refocus. I find that AI servo, sometimes I get the soft eyelashes because I might have, my camera might have just been refocusing a little bit at the time. So I'm constantly on one shot. That's my favorite. But what I do is I have this little button, and again, guys, your cameras will be able to customize it. And if you need help, I can help you, figure out where it is on your camera. But I have this little button right here where I'm literally, if I'm doing one shot here, I just hold down that button and I immediately turn my camera to AI servo. So now I can all of a sudden walk up on somebody without having to change anything in my camera. That makes sense? So I go from here, hold that button, and now all of a sudden it's AI servo. So
Little hands, I can't reach it.
your little fingers can't
I
reach it?
can't reach it, like I can't get to it.
Well, if you have long fingers, then you can, no. But there are little buttons, like I can change the button back here. How many of you guys use this little button right here, exposure lock? Anyone here use exposure lock? No? It's that little star button right there. You can change that little star button and say, hey, I want that to be AI servo. So that's the thing about these little cameras. I mean, we're paying a lot of money for these things. $2,500, $3,000. We're paying more than we do for our computers. Well, if you're a Mac user, maybe not. For you PC users, we pay like 3 times as much for our cameras. And a lot of times we just get so set on what we use it for. So please, please, please learn about your cameras. And like I said, when we're out shooting, if you guys are like, hey, how do we customize this a little bit more? Let me help you do that, okay? So that's where I'll do that. Okay, and then real quick, and then we're gonna fly right into this Kelvin thing. And Chad, can you give me kind of a heads up?
Time-wise?
Yeah.
You're right at 5 till 10.
Okay. And then, guys, the difference between eyes and camera. What's the difference? If I'm looking out here and I'm seeing Fran here, if I shot this picture, what would happen with the camera? Yeah, the background would be blown out if she's exposed properly. And if it was the other way around, if I wanted to expose behind her, she would be what? And why is that? Why can our eyes see her in the background, but our cameras can't?
Our eyes have more stops of light.
Yeah, more stops. How many stops of light can our eyes see?
I don't know.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Scientists have tried to figure this out. I mean, our eyes are amazing the way they work. Scientists have tried to figure this out. Keith, you're freaking me out doing that, man. He's got his camera hanging on. I'm better. I was like, getting all anxiety over here.
I just want you to be comfortable.
Yes. They say our eyes roughly about 24, 25 stops of light, where our cameras are putting out how many stops? About 13, 12, 13. And what that means is the difference, the dynamic range of shadows and highlights that we can see with our eyes is much, much greater than our cameras. Now, what's the other little thing that our eyes are constantly doing? What do we have in here?
Adjust.
The what?
Adjusting.
Yeah, adjusting. The pupils, right? They're closing, and you know, it's just like when you walk into you're in a dark room and you walk into a bright room and all of a sudden they shut down. What's that like in our cameras? The aperture, right? So our eyes are constantly adjusting, just like our cameras in the aperture. So that's the thing. Have you ever seen people where they're like, oh my goodness, this background's so gorgeous, and you got this beautiful sun and the trees, and this is gonna be great. We're gonna stand right here and take that picture, and you're gonna get all that behind us, right? And you're like, well, not really. And you kind of have to explain it to them, like, well, it's gonna be white. Is that cool? That's the one thing we always have to remember. Guys, there's a thing, we're not gonna get into it today, but how many of you ever studied the work of Ansel Adams? The black and white photographer, did a lot of nature, Yosemite and stuff. I loved Ansel Adams growing up. Absolutely loved him. My mom, every year she bought me an Ansel Adams calendar. That was like my thing for Christmas. Every single year I got an Ansel Adams calendar. And that was it. No. What was Ansel Adams famous for? What was the, what?
Yosemite.
Well, Yosemite, but what was it that he just absolutely mastered?
Black and white.
Black and white, but there's a system.
Yes.
There's a system. You guys remember what it's called? Okay, it's called the zone system.
Yes.
Write it down. It's not in the notes. It's called the zone system. Go check out the zone system of what Ansel Adams discovered basically. He was a master of the zone system. And the zone system is basically being able to know what our camera is going to be able to see before it shoots it. In other words, our eyes see one thing, but what can the camera see? How much of the dynamic range can the camera see? And knowing that zone system allows you to be able to shoot better in camera. I would challenge you guys. The next thing on this list here, it says chimping, right? I would challenge you guys to actually cover up the back of your screen with gaffer's tape or a Post-it note and go out and shoot and see if you can actually see what the camera's going to see before you actually see it on the back of the screen. Why do they call it chimping, by the way? Yeah, why do they call it that? Anyone know? You guys know what chimping is? Looking at the back of your screen, right? Where you pull the camera away and you look at the back to see what explodes properly. They call it chimping because just like a chimp, you're like, whoop, 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 whoop.
I've never done that.
I do it all the time. You've heard me do it actually, huh? When I'm with clients, I'm like, whoop, whoop, that's awesome. That's why it's called chimping. But the reason I bring that up, guys, is I would challenge you to cover up the back of the screen. And I've done this before, and I love it. Cover up the back of the screen and actually shoot without being able to look at the back. And that way you challenge yourself to know, okay, what is my camera going to see versus my eyes seeing, right? And how can I shoot this correctly and in camera? Those who shoot film, which I believe you do, right? Do you get the chimp?
I sometimes try to.
Right? Looking at the back, you're like, oh.
If I'm going between digital and film, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
But you can't, and it forces you to actually learn. Now I chimp a lot too, and I actually pulled out my old film, my AE1, and I went and shot down on the beach, and it was the same thing. I was like, this is hard. Like you have to go back to it. But I would encourage you guys to do that. Let's jump right into white balance real quick, guys. And as I mentioned, the faster processing time. The biggest thing with white balance, and this is gonna be so weird since this screen color is a little bit different, but that's all right. Guys, here's the biggest thing with white balance, and again, I'm not gonna like talk about this for 45 minutes like I would normally do. So please, if it's something that you're struggling with, please hit me up during lunch, during our shooting, and let me walk you through and give you kind of a more detailed lesson. But if you're not doing it, I would highly encourage you to do it, at least on the shoots here, because you can practice. It's not going to mess anything up. If you're shooting raw, it's not like you're going to mess it up where you can't get that image back, but you're going to be able to practice in a situation where you don't have the pressure of like a wedding, okay? So I would highly encourage you to give it a shot. But basically what you're doing in Kelvin, guys, is you're shooting and you're telling the camera, this is the color of the light, okay? Just like we do when we're shooting exposure, we're saying this is how the light looks. When we're shooting in Kelvin, this is the color of the light. And what it does is it challenges you to see light differently and see the temperature of light. So, for example, I might look at Keith and I'm looking at, if I'm going to expose this properly, he has nothing really bright behind him, nothing really dark behind him, so I'm going to expose right down the middle on my camera. And my temperature, since we have light coming through the window right here, this is daylight, it's about 55, but we have a little bit of yellow light here. I'm going to guess it's about 4,800 Kelvin, right? Maybe 52, 5,000, something like that. So I'm looking at light differently. I'm not just looking at exposure of light, but I'm looking at temperature of light. And you'll see that it really forces you to learn it. What's that?
46.
46? Well, it's about 500 difference, so no. Actually, he brings up a great point. He said 46. Guys, you'll see that the Kelvin temperature, if you ever try to dial it from like 5,000 to 5,100 or 5,200, you'll hardly notice a difference. I find that really our eyes only notice a difference at about 500 degrees difference. But if I'm shooting, it's literally, usually I'm looking at it going, oh, that's too blue, and I'll boost it about 1,000 degrees or 2,000 or 3,000. I hardly ever go in smaller increments. If you guys want to learn Kelvin, one of the best ways to use it or to learn it is turn your camera to the video setting on the back, which we all have, I believe. On the video setting in the back, you can go to your white balance, and then you can actually adjust the Kelvin temperature. So I want you guys all just to point your cameras across the room or at me or at Keith or somewhere, and I want you guys to dial in a Kelvin temperature and let me know what you feel would be a good temperature here in this room.
I'm like 40, 45, 50.
Okay, who are you shooting?
I'm shooting Keith mostly.
Keith? Okay.
Because the-
45,
so
50.
cute.
The higher the number is the cooler.
Yeah, okay, so here's I appreciate you bringing that
But
up,
I
Tracy.
like cooler photos.
Here's how it works. Kelvin, it basically, this chart or this little picture right here, the reason I show this, it was by a guy, his last name was Kelvin, Lord Kelvin. And basically what he discovered was that light, like right here, this flame, is this cooler or hotter? Which one's hotter than out of these two?
The blue gets hot.
The blue is the hotter one, right? So the way to think about it, now photographers, we always think in reverse when we think about Kelvin. We think, oh, if I walk into a room and it's yellow light, then I gotta make it cooler, right, to offset the yellow. So in fact, just for fun, let's go ahead and take your cameras and go to a temperature of like 2,500 and shoot it. Turn everyone into Smurfs for a minute. Okay? So what that's saying, if you're at 2,500 and you shoot it and everyone looks blue, the reason is, Tracy, is because you want to match the temperature of the light. So if I walk into a room and I see a bunch of tungsten lights, like a bridal suite that has all these little yellow lights, and that's it, right? Then I want to go down, I want to go like 2,500. I want to go to a low temperature. But if I walk into an area where there's lots of shade, really deep blue shade, then I know that, oh, I got to go the other extreme, I got to go the other side. I got to match that shade. So the way it really works, and then I'll explain it an easier way. The way it really works is you go low temperature for yellow, high temperature for blues. But what most of the time what photographers think is, oh, it's turning out blue, I got to warm it up.
I think I would always do the opposite.
Yeah. You go, oh, I got to warm it up, and you up it, yeah. I just don't want anyone to be confused if they ever read an article about it or something. That's how it's going to be. So if I were shooting in this room at night, and the only thing lighting me up was these lights right here, what would it be?